Hello, Ryan. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, sir. How are we?
Good, mate. Before we get into the guessing game, we there's a couple of things we've had a really strong start to 2024, I believe. But I forgot to mention that we have made some slight changes to the podcast start and finish that people would have noticed by now, or maybe haven't noticed. But we flipped around because basically we had to get the name um, slightly changed with from remembering dad to remembering them. So we re-recorded the intro and the outro. And if people haven't noticed, I just flipped them around. So Joe, the second eldest brother, who was at the end, he's now at the start, and Luke, who was at the start, is now at the end. So I don't know if anyone picked that up, but I thought that was a thing that we should mention. Thank you to the boys for
They did.
re-recording.
Luke and Joe noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. They were the only ones. And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe mum didn't either.
Oh,
So.
I'm sure your mum did.
And thank you to you, mate. People would have noticed with the from the start of the year, we've had to also splice in the ad for My Legacy Message. So you organize that person. And we were just talking off mic that we maybe went a bit too well with that one. It feels like we've gone amateur hour chat with us, and then the professional recording, and then back to
Bro.
amateur hour with Mark and Ryan.
I know. Shout out to Caitlin with absolutely killing it a little too nicely. So next time we need to stipulate that they use like just a Logitech headphones or something like that.
Yeah,
Just
don't
gaming
go into a
headset.
professional studio. Just go into a park so it sounds like us.
Get someone to hum in the background. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you, Caitlin, though. So I just wanted to mention those slight changes to the intro, middle, and end of the podcast. And of course, we've still got the beautiful acknowledgement to country. We didn't need to change that from Georgie in there. So thank you to all of those people. We appreciate it.
You.
Mate, let's jump into the guessing game today, where our guest is from. Three clues as always. Clue number one for you. Competitive paintball was started here.
Sanford, Australia, right? Oh no.
No, not in Brisbane.
Competitive paintball. Okay. Yeah, like this time slot, I'm thinking America again. They love shooting things.
Good point.
Paintball in America. Let's go. Maybe like Texas, somewhere in Texas.
No, I can see how you arrived at that. Good guess.
Yeah.
Not correct though.
Okay.
Clue number two. The state bird is the purple finch, which isn't actually purple.
Mm.
The Latin species name purpureus means purple or other reddish colors. I believe the bird
Hey.
is actually red and brown.
Oh, come
The
on
purple
now.
finch is red and brown. Just to
Some alignment here. Ooh, I'm a bird guy, but this is out of my
you did know
league.
that one. So purple finch and competitive paintball.
Yeah,
They
I'm going
don't
back.
they don't mix, by the way. They don't shoot.
Well, who knows?
Who knows?
State going after the state bird. I'm saying like Florida, something like that.
No.
No, that's a
Final.
terrible guess. Give me another one.
Okay, cool.
No, I don't want to. It'd
Okay.
be I like my guess was Finch, like it'd be somewhere in the middle of the country. But anyway, let's go.
Clue number three. This state is known as the Granite State. In the early 1800s, people began to quarry granite in this city, this
In
state. I
state,
almost
yeah.
said it. The state
Ah,
got a reputation for having lots of granite that was both beautiful and strong. In 1825, a man named Philip Carrigan uh, wrote a poem and a song that described this state as the Granite State.
oh man. Yeah, I really have no idea. So I'm just throwing out Hail Marys at this point. Uh, West Virginia.
No, I believe so. I'm going to tell you where it is. I believe we're on the east coast,
Okay.
or on the east side of the country at least, and northeast,
Okay.
like right up the top.
Like Maine.
Near Maine, I believe. Do you tell
Vermont.
me if this is correct? No, New Hampshire.
Oh yeah. New Hampshire is up there too, yeah.
Yeah, so specifically New London, New Hampshire.
Oh, cool.
New London was originally settled in 1773. That's where we're
So
going today.
big paintball, big big
Big
paintball state.
paintballers, purple finches, and lots of granite, New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
man. Yeah, I want to go to New Hampshire. It looks awesome.
So I guessed Currently straddles two worlds. She's a compliance risk officer during the day and a speaker life coach for all of the other hours of the day. She's a mum and a wife and spends her time on her Harley doing yoga. So that's
Yoga
on
on
her
the Harley.
Harley, comma, doing yoga.
Okay.
Belly dancing and silversmithing. She has lost two of her three children in two very distinct circumstances, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. Her goal is to spread hope to those who have suffered the loss of a child. She believes in allowing the trauma of grief to shape us, not define us. Healing is a deliberate, intentional act that takes work, but is so powerful and possible. What a wonderful quote from her. So our guest today from New London in New Hampshire is Suzy Easterling Wood. So welcome to the Remembering Them podcast, Suzy. Thank you very much for joining us all the way over from New Hampshire in the United States.
Yes, yes. Thank
We
you.
started our podcast in the intro. You wouldn't have heard it. You will when it's released, by talking about where you live and the state and New London. I gave Ryan a series of clues, which he wasn't able to ascertain where you're from. Tell us a little bit about New Hampshire and why we should come and visit. I know Ryan's quite keen to get over there now, but what is
It looks
something we should do? Yeah.
So now is not the time to come to New Hampshire because we're in mud season. We're in the transition period between a very long winter and our summer. But New Hampshire is just an amazing place to live. It's gorgeous. We've got mountains, we've got the ocean. I mean, other than mud season, there is no time that you would not want to be in New Hampshire. Really, it's a really beautiful place to live, quite frankly. So yeah, you should come visit us.
It
But not
looks
this
cool.
time of year.
Yeah. New London looks like a small town.
It is quite a small town. Probably at this point in time, I would guesstimate maybe about 10,000 in our town. But
Okay.
we're spread out everywhere in New Hampshire. You have to drive. So I work. It's a 70-mile commute for me when I work.
Oh, wow.
If I'm not working from home, to go to the grocery store, it's another 30 miles. Everything is just very, very spread out. If you're not down in the southern part of the town of the state, but it's a beautiful. I mean, everybody loves New London. It's a very quiet community. It's just kind of a neat place to be.
Awesome.
Great. We'll put it on the list. So, Suzy, thank you for joining us again. If you'd like to start by telling us who we're going to be remembering today and their story and what happened to them.
So I actually have lost two of my children. I've had three children, and I lost my son, Cray, Cray, in December of 2016. He was 5 years old. And his story it's actually a beautiful story. I mean, he was born with a complex 1 deficiency of the Krebs cycle, which is a part of the mitochondria. Didn't know that straight out of the gate. And sort of what happened, at about the 6-week mark, he wasn't sort of reaching the normal milestones. Went to the doctor. He wasn't really concerned, but he said, well, I trust your mother's intuition. Let's go get a CAT scan. Did that, ended up being an MRI. And at about 8 weeks of age, his brain had already started to atrophy significantly. And so sort of what came after that was a series of just, significant blows. We ended up having a beautiful baby boy who was completely disabled, completely. And it's not even as though his plateau might have been at about 8 months. And then after that, since there was so much atrophy happening, anything that he had gained started to go away, and it just got worse from there. So we dealt with many cases of pneumonia, because with mitochondria being the powerhouse of each cell, obviously the energy that the muscles were needed wasn't there. So he ended up atrophying when he was swallowing. I'm sorry, aspirating when he was swallowing. And ultimately, at the age of 5, we thought it was just a normal case of pneumonia for him. Took him to the doctor. Doctor said, you know, he has a pleural effusion, so there was fluid between his lungs and his chest wall. He said, basically, the only way that we're going to be able to take care of this is if we put him under, you know, intubate him, put him under, and he might not make it through the process. And if he does make it through the process, he will never be extubated. And, you know, we had really found our North Star with him and the choices that we made. It was all about dignity and comfort for him. And, you know, a 5-year-old being intubated for the rest of his life, nonverbal, blind, not able to do anything, that just didn't seem to be the right way to go. So it was actually kind of a God moment story in that we went home that night, which was kind of exciting because we forgot the car seat, and went home for the first time in his 5 years of life. I slept with him that night, pulled out the futon, uh, watching television. He fell asleep. I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning, and the same movie that was on from the night before, I kind of propped my head up and I was just rubbing his head, and his breathing just very gradually slowed down, and he passed. And his beautiful little soul left, and what was left was his little broken body. So I feel so thankful for that experience as a mom, being with him coming into the world, and then having the peace of mind when he went out of our world, because we tried so hard to keep him comfortable, and dignity was really important for us, for him. And it was on his own terms, and it was just like the most amazing experience that a mom can have, I think. And I knew, you know, I'd prepared for this. I had prepared for his funeral a year before, because we just never knew when it was going to happen. But this was kind of a surprise. It was a surprise. You know, so, you know, emerged out of that, and I felt like the lessons that he taught me and everybody that he came into contact with, because he was like this little angel. He was peaceful and happy, and he just kind of like, everybody's blood pressure just went down when they were around him. So it was just such a wonderful experience. And then you know, process that. Some other things happened in our life, and then along came 2020. You know, I've gone through a divorce, and it's just me and my 2 daughters. And I had my feisty older daughter. Her name was Cameron. She had graduated early from high school, and she went down to Boston, did a year of college down there at 17. Then she wanted to go out west, so she went out west. And ultimately, what happened with her, I got a call in February of 2020. Just got to work. I work for corrections, and just gotten into my office, and the phone rang, and it was my ex-husband's newest ex-wife calling me, and she was very hysterical on the phone, and she was saying something, and I couldn't understand what she was saying. And she said, you know, they just found Cameron's body. So, you know, the world just stopped. It absolutely stopped at that moment in time for me. I had to re-engage. I asked her why she was telling me this, and she said, well, law enforcement is here at our house right now. So I said, put an officer on the phone, and he did confirm that they had just found her body in a hotel room in Portland, Oregon. But he could not give me any details at that moment in time. So what transpired from there was my daughter, just on a side note, you know, was kind of living her crazy 20-year-old life, and she was stripping. She lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, and her roommate and one of their close friends, who were all in the same industry, would go out to Portland, dance out there for a week, and then go back. And they had gone out there, the 3 of them, on a Wednesday. On Sunday, one of the friends flew back. On Monday, my daughter was going to go and dance, and her roommate was very, very upset by that. She didn't want her to go. I have no idea why, but my daughter was like, well, we came here to make money, so I'm going to go, and I'm going to go do that. And so she did that, and then she went over to her girlfriend's house after that, came home at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and the roommate was irate and had been posting on social media and texting to my daughter all night long about what a horrible human being she was. And so she got home, things got very, very ugly. And my daughter was FaceTiming with her boyfriend and had to disconnect because it was getting so rambunctious. And that was the last contact that my daughter had with anybody. The roommate subsequently changed her plane ticket, went to Walmart, bought a new suitcase, packed up her stuff, packed up my daughter's stuff, and left my daughter dead in the hotel room. And flew back to Salt Lake to their apartment. Didn't tell anybody what had happened, or nobody knew anything. So the following day, when they went to go clean the room as they were supposed to be checked out, they found my daughter's body. And everything just sort of unfolded from there. I didn't know any of those details when they told me that she passed away. I didn't find out those things. I found out all of that information on my own because right at that moment in time, COVID, we remember COVID, but also there were riots in Portland that were breaking out right at that time. And they didn't have the bandwidth to investigate why a sex worker was found dead in a hotel room. So when, fast forward after memorial service and all that had taken place, and her roommate and everything came into my home after that, never, of course, telling me anything of what really happened. So I didn't really figure it out until later. I was able to get a little bit of information from the police, and I had them send me the crime scene photos. Minus, I didn't want a picture of my daughter, but I wanted to see what the room looked like. So within the same week, I got the crime scene pictures, which did unfortunately include a picture of my daughter. And I got my daughter's suitcases, which came back from Portland, which were empty. And that's what sort of red flags. Oh my gosh, what really happened. I ended up hiring a private detective. I had already done all the legwork. I knew everything that there was to know, short of the roommate coming forward and confessing. There was no way that we were going to find out what happened because the police weren't interested in investigating it. So it became a very acute lesson in learning how to let go. I had to learn how to let go of all of the anger, of the unknowing, because even if I knew it wasn't going to bring her back, and releasing a lot of that, those emotions that were let goable so that I could actually pay attention to the other emotions that I needed to sort of navigate through to kind of process the loss of yet another child. And, in a nutshell, and there's more details to that, but those are my two experiences with loss. And, I've lost other family members, but those are the most defining, actually, I don't want to say defining, shaping. They shaped me. So much growth and so much gratitude and appreciation that I came out on the other side of those two experiences, and that's where sort of I am at this point in my life. I want to help people. I want to be able to share my story so that they understand that, we have these significant losses that impact us just so deeply. But there still is so much goodness in the world. And, really working on at this point in my life, figuring out how to share that story with people, and help them navigate these situations. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, I have a question of like, what was the roommate's story? Or like when she everything was fine when she left, that was her story?
That's a really, really great question, Ryan. The response that I was able to get from the roommate was very, very brief, and then she basically ghosted me. She said that they got in a fight and things were just too hectic, and when she left, Cameron was sleeping. When you kind of when you think about the story, it just doesn't. I mean, so this is your roommate that you live with back in Salt Lake City. If she's just sleeping, why would you go buy a suitcase, pack all her shit up, and then jump
Yeah.
on a plane and fly back? If you know that she's not going to be following you back the next day.
Yeah.
So that was her. And after that, there was never a direct communication. Police were not even. They never even interviewed her. Never.
Oh
I
my
know.
God.
It's like it's mind blowing. It is mind blowing. And those are the things that I really have to let go. The anger and everything is still there. I'm not gonna lie. It's not like I don't have these distinct fantasies about finding the roommate and duct taping her to a chair and just beating the living snot out of her, but I'm not gonna do that. And that's not my nature. And I know that
Yeah, I would. Like,
well, I would get arrested.
I know.
And I have one
Is
child left,
is
so
she
I still need
still
to take her.
is she still in general public, or is she she's
She lives in Salt Lake City. Yeah.
did she never got arrested?
They never even talked to her.
Holy shit.
They never even talked to her. And so, the long and short of that is when I hired the private investigator, who was just an amazing woman, and I presented her with all of the factual information, phone records, the slides, the room key slides from the hotel, all of the information that I had. She came back to me a few days later, and God bless her, she said, I don't want to take your money because you've already done all the work. And short of this person sitting down and confessing to what really happened, we're never going to know. So when the autopsy, or actually I don't even think they did an autopsy. They cremated her very quickly, but they did a toxology report. They found coke in her system, which she had done a couple lines the night before, which the girl who she had been dancing with, she told us about that. And they found fentanyl in her system as well, which is interesting because when these two girls traveled from Utah here to New Hampshire for the service, several of my daughter's friends heard them talking about it and saying something about pressed pills, tell them pressed pills. So what I'm thinking, you think of, let's just like put ourselves in that situation, right then and there. You come home, you're in your hotel room, and you're in a big old nasty fight. And I mean, are you really going to want to catch a buzz at that point in time? Are you going to want to do drugs at that moment in time? I don't think so. In the crime scene photo that did have a picture of my daughter, the one peaceful thing about that is the picture that I could see of her. When she slept, she always kind of wrapped herself up like a burrito. And she looked like she had just fallen asleep, on her side, with her comforter up around her. So I couldn't see any trauma. I couldn't see anything like that. There was a glass of wine beside the bed. So did the roommate put the fentanyl in the wine? She drank the wine and overdosed. And those are the things I'm never going to have the answers to those questions. So yeah, those are the things that I've kind of had to let go of, and in an effort to honor my daughter. And she was amazing. She was smart and absolutely stunning, just bubbly, funny, goofy, really difficult, hard-headed, determined. And how she ended up where she did, doing what she was doing, is not a mystery. That little gap between when my son passed away and when my daughter passed away was a few years of some very significant um, physical and sexual abuse from my ex-husband. And unfortunately, Cameron was at the receiving end of that. I found out after I knew about the physical, I knew about the psychological warfare that my ex-husband had waged, but there was a lot of damage that was done to Cameron. So, how she ended up in that industry, it's no, and she also was a dancer, younger, and not to be glib, but she loved being naked. So it wasn't a surprise that she had gone into that to heal whatever dad issues she still had, but she was on the other side of that, and she had really, matured into uh, just a remarkable young lady. I mean, she was just amazing, and she had so much compassion because of her brother. She had a completely disabled brother and then lost her brother. She wasn't afraid of people who with just disabilities. She would go up to anybody and help anybody. Um, and I think, where this roommate is involved, I think the roommate was, and she had indicated there was red flags, a long time ago. Um, the roommate was extremely jealous, extremely clingy. Um, but Cameron always felt like she needed to save people. And I think that she viewed the roommate as kind of they had a great time together. Don't get me wrong, but I think that, she stayed there in that, again, another abusive situation in an attempt to try to help her and help her navigate through her life. So definitely not an easy story.
No, not at all. Thank you for sharing both of those very, very different stories. Quite a beautiful description with your son, I would have thought, and then quite a harrowing story with your daughter. So thank you very, very much for sharing those. Really, really appreciate it. It goes without saying it's been very, very difficult. Do you have a favorite story or memory of Cray and Cameron when they were younger?
So with Cray, again, totally disabled. And so it's not like we could make memories like going to the park or, going and doing anything like that. Sorry, I got very loud motorcycles going by, which I should be on mine. Uh, the beauty of Cray and the memories that I have of him are very underwhelming to somebody else, but to me, they're very poignant. At the end of every day, I tried to stop working for a while. It did not work. It was not successful because it was like a death watch. I would just, go and sit and wait and wait and wait. And the days were going by, and I'm like, no, this is not going to work at all. So I went back to work. And, the best part of my day with him was when I would come home, everybody would be fed, and we would just sit on the couch. And again, he was nonverbal, but he would vocalize things. His favorite thing that he would say was a boo, a boo, a boo. And so put him on my shoulder, on my lap with his cheek right up here. And he had these beautiful, big, chubby cheeks. And he would kind of rub his head into mine. And then he would start to a boo, which after not saying anything all day, that to me was kind of a little victory as a mom, because I knew he was happy that I was with him. Um, and those are the little things. Again, it's very, very different scenario, 5 years, totally disabled, so the memories that I have are a lot more family oriented too, of just times when we were all together, and also seeing the impact that he had on other people was just beautiful. And like I said, he just brought everybody's blood pressure down because he was absolutely beautiful. I used to have black hair, so black hair, big blue eyes, and he just settled everybody down. Now my daughter, oh God, we've got so many memories. It's you can't count them. We lived through such a harrowing time that my two daughters, my daughter Lawson, she's 19 now, and Cameron and I, we fought through so much that once we really started to live again and stop being so afraid every single day, um, it was just the small things that we did. But probably the neatest memory that I have is she'd already moved out to Utah, and she had come back for just a brief visit over July. And the three of us went to Hampton Beach, which is about an hour from where we are now. And like I said, there had something in her had had just settled, and she was like so comfortable in her skin. And like when she walked on the beach, there's thousands of people on this beach because we don't have a whole lot of beach in New Hampshire. And her energy just radiated, her happiness, her confidence. She was so peaceful to be with me and her sister. And the two of them, just to watch the two of them was the most amazing thing. And I think, when I go back to a place, that's the place that I go to. That when I need that settling of her memory, and how beautiful and amazing she was on the inside, how much she loved me, how much we had lived through, and how much she loved her sister. That was uh, that's the memory that I go back to. And I can remember getting in the car, we had something to get back to. And, we're in the car, we're all changing out of our swimsuits, all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking it does not get any better than this right here and right now with the two people that matter more to me than anything in the world. And it was just one of those mom moments that my cup couldn't get any fuller, and I think that's where I go to, Mark, when I'm really in a tough place, because the tough places definitely still happen, but I have to compartmentalize and put them in places so that I can keep going. But that's a real positive place that I like to go and just remember her, because she was just amazing.
Suzy, I wanted to ask you about Lawson and also yourself. One of the immediate questions that spring to mind for me is how did you and Lawson get through those really, really tough times, the immediate loss, immediately after the losses of Cray and then Cameron?
Lawson doesn't remember Cray. She was only one when he passed away. Her memories are my memories, or pictures that she's seen or anything like that. After Cray passed away, I think like any other normal human being, you gravitate towards those things that numb you out, try to do that. Even though I was really well prepared and it was such a beautiful experience, I probably lived on a pretty steady diet of wine and Ambien and English muffins probably for a few weeks. But then, you gotta kind of pull up your pants, pull up your bootstraps, put on your big girl pants, and you got to just keep going through it. So, that was a lot of a much more different situation. I had nothing but positive memories, with my son. So, and again, having been present for him passing, just it provided me so much grace and comfort knowing that he didn't die in his bedroom alone or in a hospital. He was right with me. It was just how God intended it to be. Now, after Cameron passed away, I mean, it was just a shit show because COVID had just hit. So my daughter couldn't even go to school. She didn't even have a school to go to because everything was on lockdown. We weren't allowed to go anywhere, which was a godsend, because I was able to stay home for quite some time and work remotely once we did go back. Excuse me. How did we get through it? Oh, God. I think allowing each other just to feel it and not try to pretend it was something less than it was. I mean, this was a huge, huge, again, our bond was much more unique than, a traditional type family, because we'd survived. We had survived such a harrowing episode in our life. Trying to support Lawson through it has been the hardest because that was her best friend. That was her person. That was her person. Trying to be patient, allowing ourselves to feel the emotions as they came. And again, we had the advantage of not having to get dressed and have to go out and be around people. The the interesting part of it is that Lawson's never gone back to school since then. It's been 4 years. She tried to go back into she was in a private school prior to that. She tried to go to, our local regional school, and she has an inability to connect and identify with kids her own age at this point in time. She's lived through so much. When you go to school and you're thinking, you're listening to other kids being, jealous about boyfriends or da da da. It's just like she doesn't relate on the same level as other kids. So ended up going to charter schools and is working her way through that. It's just been we've had to readjust our sails, and nothing is normal in Lawson's life as far as the trajectory, going to prom and all that kind of stuff. It's just been very, very different. But I guess the best way to answer your question, Mark, there is no one way. We just allowed each other the grace to talk about Cameron when we needed to talk about her. Initially, the day after we found out that she passed away, my dad lives in Manhattan. We had already had a trip planned, and we were sort of on the fence, well, what do we do? We've had this huge thing happen. And I just thought we need to get out of here, because everywhere we look in this house it's our house. The three of us, everywhere we looked was Cameron. So, we went down to New York City, and I got to say, that was like salve to the wound, because we could go to New York City, walk those streets, totally anonymous, cry our eyes out, be with my father. And it was like a great experience. But, to answer your question, I just think it was allowing each other the opportunity to be with it. She shuts down a lot more than I do. She's also a teenager, going through all of the teenage things that normal teenagers go through, but then putting that on top of it. It was probably the most challenging thing that I've gone through in my life, is to try to help her navigate through this. And we're still, she's still not on the other side of it. So it's still something that we work on and try to just be. I don't toxic positivity is not a thing, but I still try to see, the positive in the growth opportunities that we have through it. And I'm hoping that, when Lawson gets on the other side of it, maybe she'll want to help other people through it too, because it's a tough one.
I was going to say, it's getting away the day after learning of a loved one dying is underrated. I did the same thing. It was sort of like when my best friend died, but the next day we were supposed to go, to the beach, like an hour and a half away, and we were umming and ahhing about whether or not we should go. Like how could we leave at this time? But it was the best thing for me. Like you just got the hell away, and yeah, just sat on the beach for a couple of days and got my thoughts together. I think there's something in that for sure. Like you shouldn't feel guilty about going somewhere and getting away. You kind of feel like you need to almost. It's almost a little hack.
Yeah, it is. It's not a bad hack. I think you should start promoting that for people to do. And fortunately, we were going to a location where, New York City. My dad has a lovely apartment, and that was one of Cameron's favorite places to be in the world. And the relationship that my dad and his wife had with Cameron was just, it was a bond like I had never seen. So they were devastated too. Unfortunately, I mean, a byproduct of that was that it, really pissed off people here. Not lots of people, but a person or two. And then that kind of a different trajectory on that. But, when you're looking at grieving and, what we need to do to take care of ourselves, it's really can't be about anybody else. It's all about you. You do you, and you do what makes you feel comfort, take it where you can get it. And that's what we did. And it was amazing. It really was. It was a really good thing. It cleared my head a little bit.
You mentioned briefly earlier lessons from Cray. What lessons did you learn from Cray and also Cameron?
Probably the greatest lesson in Cray's life that I learned was sort of the ability to be mentally flexible. When you have a child that's disabled, first of all, you never imagine you're going to have a child that's disabled. mental flexibility, because I say prior to, Cray, prior to Cameron being born, I probably was pretty black and white. I'm in risk and compliance. It's my job. There's rules, there's regulations, there's black and white. This is how you do it. And there was not a lot of gray in my life either. So when Cray came along and the picture was just this evolving landscape, every day something different, it instilled in me that ability to sort of, I had to sit back and I had to think of what the North Star was. This North Star for him in his situation was the dignity and the comfort. And when I reminded myself of that at every single crossroads, every single juncture, those are the things that I thought, what is the right thing for him? How can I honor that to make his life the best that it can possibly be? So that's my North Star, and just sort of learning how to be flexible, and also just gratitude. Gratitude. People think about the loss of a child, and I don't like platitudes. They drive me crazy when people say, you know, uh, nobody should, have to bury their child. Well, you know what? Nobody wants to bury anybody. But, our lives are just so fragile. We are just these fragile human beings put on this earth. And at any given moment, I could get done with this, go and fall down the stairs, and I could pass away. We never know when that's going to happen. So, that became a pet peeve of mine when people pull out the platitudes. I forgot where I was going with that. But anyways, my Cameron lessons, the major Cameron lesson of her whole life was learning how to let go. When I found out that she was a stripper, I found out by accident. It was horrifying, mortifying for any parent. Really, who wants to? But I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice. I love my daughter unconditionally. I can't stand what she's doing, and the ramifications for her soul, for her psyche, and what's going to happen when she decides to get out of that. That was my concern for her. I had to learn how to let go. I had to make that choice of supporting her through that journey. That in no way did I ever condone it. Trust me. And then, after Cameron passed away, and finding out the sort of the nefarious details of something really bad happened here, and nobody cares. That was a let go that was a life changer. I was the rage and the anger and the not knowing. It was just like eating me up and eating me up and eating me up. So, it was a very deliberate process of intentionally learning how to release it and allow myself the movement to navigate through all of these emotions that were worthy, that needed my attention, the sadness, the letting go, the loss of this freaking amazing human being. She was just a magical unicorn, and she was never going to be able to. She wanted to have babies. She wanted the white picket fence. She wanted all that, and to know that she was never going to be able to have that, I think was, learning how to let go of, to navigate through the pain of that, but letting go of all the other stuff that wasn't going to change anything, and it was going to get in the way of my grieving. I think those are probably the best lessons that I had.
And speaking of lessons, you may have kind of already answered this, but to summarize, and you've noted that you've had very two different experiences with Cray and Cameron. But if in terms of other people out there that are experiencing the loss of a child, whether that be through a disability or a situation medically that they pass away, or a situation like Cameron where it was completely unexpected, what advice would you give to a parent that has lost a child or is even unfortunate enough like yourself to have lost multiple?
I think there's a couple of different things that I think of in my own journey. And it's tough because I think people have a hard time hearing it, but really appreciating the opportunity to be a mom to these two beautiful children. Looking at the bigger picture and recognizing that because we've had these events happen to us, we don't have to wallow in it for the rest of our lives. We have to intentionally plow our way through healing. I mean, and I think that's something, people's time heals all wounds. I don't believe in that. It might dull them a little bit, but the work doesn't get done. And then you're left, I think one of the things that prompted me to sort of go on the journey that I'm on right now is after Cameron died, I went onto Facebook, and there's all sorts of really helpful groups on Facebook. And I was reading people's posts, and we're talking 5, 10, 20 years later, I'm reading, I still cry every single day for my child. And it just broke my heart into pieces. I thought, it made me feel guilty at first, because I'm thinking, well, my son died 15 years ago, and I'm not crying every day. I have nothing but love in and positive thoughts. And it made me start to really think of those tools that I do use. When I wake up in the morning and I have this cloud over my head, I have to sort my emotions and think, all right, what's going on right now? Why am I feeling so paralyzed right now? And then I package them up and I sort them in my head, and it gives me a little bit of clarity to be able to move through and get my day going, and then that clarity becomes a little bit bigger. I'm not talking about ignoring emotions. I'm talking about organizing them in a way that makes them a little bit more manageable, because a lot of the families who have lost a child, they have other children that they still have to take care of, and they have to find the space to take care of themselves, which is the most important thing. Maybe that's the lesson. I mean, I do yoga, go to the gym 5 days a week. I ride my motorcycle everywhere. I belly dance on stage. I do all these things, but I do all these things for my head, and they bring me peace, and they make me a better mom. They make me a better wife. They allow me the opportunity to manage my emotions that get so painful sometimes, that I got to go do something that makes me feel better. So I don't know how succinct that is, but I think allowing yourself the opportunity to acknowledge the emotions, figuring out which emotions you can let go of that aren't going to serve you in your healing process, placing the emotions that you have in a location that when you have that quiet time and you have the opportunity to just have it hard, just to cry or be angry or whatever, and then manage it and then move on from there, put it back where it needs to go, and move forward. Those are the things that I do, so that I'm not such a hot mess when I'm trying to go to work, or get something done at the house, where I have all these things that are like, I feel like Charlie Brown, the one that has all the stuff over his head, and he's all messy, and that's what my emotions feel like. But if I can organize them, it allows me the opportunity to make some space, so that I can see some light on the other side of it.
That's a good answer. Thank you, Suzy. One final question for you for the podcast. If both Cray and Cameron, maybe individually, maybe together, were in front of you today, what would you say to them?
That's out of left field. With Cray, I would say that I hope that in our time apart, you have been able to run and jump and play and do everything that a little boy should have been able to do. And that I miss it. God, Cameron was here. Just tell her how much I miss her. That she was just a really great daughter. She taught me so much. I think that's it. Michelle.
Thank you for sharing that. I didn't pre-warn you that was our most difficult question coming. So
Yeah, that was
thank you.
harsh. Usually you give him a little heads up, but
I do. I
You
realize
can't see
that.
the snot.
Thank you, Susie. That was beautiful. And thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today and sharing a beautiful, as I said during the podcast, a beautiful story around Cray, and then a really painful story with Cameron, and then equally both losses being painful. So thank you very much for coming onto the podcast and sharing your stories. I'm sure it will have helped someone out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being able to share it. I really do. I appreciate you guys.
So Ryan, that was Susie talking about Cray and Cameron.
just when you think you've met someone who's had a rough trot, you meet someone else who's had just as rough, maybe even rougher.
Two
It's
very different
wild.
circumstances as well. That was just
Mm.
crazy the way I really loved how descriptive Susie was with Cray's passing, and then obviously Cameron's was
Mm.
horrible. And
Oh,
look
so
at the person
different.
she is
Yeah,
today.
God. Man,
She's
and
a
it's
gym loving. We're talking about her off the recording as well. Gym loving, yoga loving, Harley riding, tattoo loving
yeah,
machine. She's awesome.
just
She's
very fit and healthy.
yeah.
Especially yeah, insane. Man, it's just like losing specifically about Cameron, but like losing somebody is hard enough, and then having to deal with like what she dealt with and is still dealing with. Uh, man, I don't know how she does it. Like she kept talking about having to, isolate those feelings and move on and all of these different things. Man, that's hard. That's not, I don't know that I could do that. I honestly, I don't know that I could.
Yeah, I don't know either. I guess you won't ever know unless you're in that situation. But the question that kept jumping up in my mind as we were going through was how? How did
How
you
do you
get
do
through
this?
that? And then
Yeah.
Cameron, how did you get through that? How are you still functioning today?
I
And
don't
we'll
know, man.
never, well, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll never know. For
Yeah, maybe Lawson, like, having to show up and be there for Lawson as well would have helped for sure. Like
mm,
she didn't specifically say that, but I think you find that, don't you? Like when, parents lose children, that keeps them going as well.
yeah,
Man, that's a tough situation.
really tough situation. And I really appreciated how vulnerable Susie was with sharing the story and how descriptive she was. Just obviously very comfortable with both situations and just talking about it in general. But in saying that, I think the purpose of her being so vulnerable and open to talking about it is she's genuinely wanting to help people that are
Mm.
maybe going through something similar.
It's pretty fresh too. I would say 4 years isn't that far removed either. So
Yeah.
should held together very well.
Yeah. And so we'll share all of, she has a website, so we'll share that when we release the podcast. I believe that Susie also has a speaking gig coming out in a couple of weeks. So if you're around the New Hampshire area, go and check her out. I'm sure it'll be amazing. And for us, remember, we've got the My Legacy Message service. We have our Patreon exclusive chat with Susie and all of our guests for our Patreon members. Jump on board there. That was a really cool chat with Susie that we just had. And also, we have all the channels: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Like and follow us on there.
Got all the channels. All
All of them covered. Oh,
we're
maybe
on
not all of them.
MySpace. We got
I'm sure
MySpace.
there's some weird. Oh, X. We're not on X, and
What
yeah.
about Friendster? Friendster, MySpace.
No, not on those.
No, well,
Mate, thank you very much for joining me today for our chat with Susie. What an what an amazing story.
yeah.
What an amazing person. I'm looking forward to the next amazing guest that we have on.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye, mate.
Bye bye.